Why is it that every time I start these videos, it's only then that you want to come out and come hang out with me? It's always because he wants to interrupt my videos. Wasabi! Hello and welcome, fellow writer friends that I've met on the DFW con. This is day 2 of my notes, and day 2 of the con itself, and some of the valuable information I got from there. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get to it. So, one of the first sessions I took in day 2 was Fighting Demons, Internal versus External Conflict with Jay Wells. My notes are still the same, where 1 is stars to look up, 2 stars are my personal notes. And just kind of getting the feel for the class, I kind of wrote my personal note. We want things to go well in our lives, and conflicts are for the story. She started off with conflict is the engine of story, and this is true. I mean, clearly. And this class in particular was very deceiving because it did seem kind of bare bones and kind of simple at first, until it expanded out and really got into the steak and potatoes of the matter, if you will. Now, of course, the external conflict is pretty much your hero's journey, and the internal conflict can also be the hero's journey itself as well. But generally, we like to look at external conflicts because it's a physical thing that the hero can conquer and defeat and gain a victory from. Now, obviously it's called external because it's outside. It's outside of the hero, and it's something that the hero can touch and feel and fight. Bam! Okay. And you have your goal, your motivation, and your conflict. With the goal, it's I want to kill the dragon. With motivation, I want the girl, so I have to kill the dragon. The conflict, I fight the dragon. Very simple stuff. The antagonist is the external force and can be a person or a thing or a concept. Concepts being maybe the hero has a mental illness, maybe the hero has self-limiting belief that stops him from achieving his goal, that kind of thing. The problem with plot-driven books is they can become predictable and rather formulaic because we don't have because we all want a pretty good story for sure, and a lot of us just want to be entertained with a conflict, which is the hero's story, and we just want that delivered to us. But what makes a lot of these books, movies, any medium really predictable is when there's no internal conflict. There's no conflict of the heart inside. So, you introduce the inner conflict to organify the story, to make it more real, to help your readers connect with your characters through empathy. Set self-limiting story, and this is what the inner conflict is. It's a self-limiting story they tell themselves about their place in the world, and that is internal conflict. That is the message, the truth they believe in, which may not be true, or it is true, but they work to dispel that truth. Then we have the LWB formula, LWB, that is longing, wound, and a belief, a self-limiting belief. The protagonist becomes who they are when they grow and affirm themselves. And that's the end of, that's pretty much beating B, or defeating the belittling belief. A longing caused by a wound that creates a self-limiting belief. Now, the wound could be the inciting event that causes your character to have that self-limiting belief, while the longing could be the desire that character has. Now, she used the example of Cersei Lannister from Game of Thrones. I've never seen it. I've heard it was great. If you want to send me some links, both legal and illegal, please do so. Cersei's longing to protect her children. Her wound is being told by a witch that her kids will die. The self-limiting belief is if I'm cunning enough, I can beat fate. So, yeah, the self-limiting belief doesn't have to be a negative. The self-limiting belief, in my opinion, this is kind of a double star here. It's your perception of the world. And self-limiting doesn't necessarily have to be negative. It's negative as a growth of a person, but it doesn't have to be negative against you. For example, you can believe you're the best in the world, and it's self-limiting because you don't open yourself up to be humble and thus learn new lessons. That's what self-limiting beliefs mean to me, at least. If you want to argue, feel free. I'm always open to discussions about craft and writing craft and all that good stuff. So come at me. And like I said, self-limiting belief doesn't have to be negative, but what stops them from figuring themselves out? And that means looking at the ugly truths of who we are as people. Words don't have to be singular, or the wounds don't have to be singular, I should say. So the wound of she's told by a witch that her kids will die, that's not her only one. I believe also her father tells her that she's only made to produce babies. And, you don't have to have just one self-limiting belief or one one wound that your character can suffer. I wrote here to look up my own LWB formula, what I long for, what is my wound in my own self-limiting beliefs. Now, if you watch me on YouTube, you'll probably see that as I continue along making videos. And then, of course, there's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now the lower the need on the pyramid, the deeper the character. What does that mean? Well, in my personal opinion, if your character... as soon as you mention that your main character is rich, I'm immediately turned off. I'm sorry if this offends anybody. Something about rich people makes it hard for me to kind of connect with. Maybe because I grew up poor myself. And what this means is, the more you have, the pyramid of needs, you have basic survival on the bottom, safety on top, and then you get to the kind of self-confidence, self-actualization, finding your dreams. That's kind of the top. And the reason why that's on top is because you have everything else provided for. You don't have to worry about shelter or food, and you don't have to worry about safety and security because you live in a nice neighborhood. Now you're depressed because you don't know why your father didn't love you or some other bullcrap like that. And generally, when your character deals with the higher levels of needs on the hierarchy, it's not that interesting of a story. And this is kind of why I don't connect with characters who are naturally rich right off the bat. If they steal that money and get rich that way, there's a reason for that. They got to survive. And generally, when you're telling a story, the lower the need, the more... I'm pointing the arrow down, the more interesting the character becomes, because that they're trying to fight for survival, and really what they need kind of comes out through that. Plot is left brain and character is the right brain. That makes sense. With plot, it's a lot more methodical, more mechanical. You have your craft in there and the little techniques there. Whereas character, it's more like... I like to think of you look at a circuit board for plot, everything fits together and just kind of goes like that. Whereas character is much like throwing paint on a wall. It doesn't have to be pretty as long as it's vibrant and your readers kind of get a good idea of what you're trying to do. Okay, so why does our hero want... This was an example that she gave us that really resonated with me. Why does our hero want respect? Maybe as a kid, his dad lost his job and became a janitor. And that created kind of a self-limiting belief that failure means, working a custodial job, while the next guy over loves his job as a janitor, The societal beliefs can also shape the desire. That makes sense. Look at the way, our society works today. We all want to be figure model thin, or we want to be super buff, or we want to be attractive because societal beliefs kind of shape us in that way. When, hundreds of years ago, being Rubenesque was considered beautiful. Not so much anymore. The internal and external should clash at the climax, but not always. And back to the lesson from yesterday about fear. Your character doesn't have to have their stuff resolved. As long as they take actions to deal with it, that is growth in itself. But if you want the most bang for your buck, the internal struggle and external should clash at the climax of your story. Our protagonist can come up and confront his self-limiting beliefs and find it to be a lie. The thing he thought he needed or he wanted turns out to not be what he wanted in the first place. That is also an interesting way to take it. You want to create high stakes, which is high depth or death. and it could be death of a moral, a code, or a relationship. This one really stuck out to me. So, let's say you're having kind of your story doesn't necessarily deal with like supernatural and otherworldly beings or nothing like that, right? It takes place in the high school, and the relationships between the students kind of feel like life and death, and the death of a relationship or a moral or a code that could be also pretty traumatic. Like relationships, not so much because we all know how high schoolers are, but like if one kid always vowed to never drink, but he drinks at the party, that's the death of his own morals, and that could be challenging for a character. His self-limiting belief was that he was better than everybody else because he didn't drink, because he was, righteous and upstanding. That's a self-limiting belief. And let's go ahead and get this out of the way. We all have self-limiting beliefs, and it's okay if you don't break them. They can be good. Like my own self-limiting belief is I want to be the very best, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. It's self-limiting because I'm putting the blinders on to negativity and doubt. So self-limiting beliefs are not necessarily a bad thing. So that's what I want to get across right away. Let's see. Know your character's lie. They start to realize that what is not the same as their need or their wants. Now, what does this mean? What they want is not what they need. If you want to create conflict like that. So that's kind of the deal there. But it's good to know what your character wants and also knowing what they need and kind of have that kind of clash with each other if possible. Overcoming external fears, change the internal state. This is very much like setting up a goal, setting up a challenge, and conquering it, with all the courage and guts you can muster together. Use the subplots effectively. The themes around the plot contributes to the plot, or the themes of the subplot, I should say, should contribute to the main plot, support or promote the complications or solutions to the plot. So it can either add more problems to the plot or solve a few while not obviously wrapping up the whole story, but you should use subplots carefully. I have a note to look up. It's by a gentleman named Donald Moss, and he said, "I will do anything to reach my goal, just don't ask me to blank." And do this to figure out your character. What is the goal your character wants to reach? I will do anything to kill the dragon, just don't ask me to team up with a really powerful guy because he's my enemy. That kind of situation. Also, don't be generic with your struggles. This goes into a little lesson later, but maybe ask yourself, why is he afraid of love? That's something to consider. This was a nice quote here that she said, the difference between manipulative and charming is manipulation, but also needing to be liked. Whereas manipulation is obviously the more sociopathic definition. But yes, charming is manipulative, but needing to be liked. I really like that. It's good to know what solved looks like. What does your character look like when all of his or her troubles are solved? We know they are broken. What does fixed look like to that character? What would it look like if they didn't have the wound anymore, pretty much? If all they had was longing and their beliefs, what would they look like? And make a wound complex and multiple. Specificity makes a story relatable. And this was a really good note because I know us writers, we are kind of in this weird industry. I think writing is one of the strangest enigmas that continues to exist today, because you want to write your own story, but you also want to write something that sells. But something about the specificity of the wound of your characters makes them a lot more relatable to the audience. So that's something to consider. And it's not so bad if the struggles of your characters happen to, reflect something in your own past and whatnot. So that's something to consider. Oh. I wrote my own personal note here as to what my wound is. I don't think I'm ready to share that quite yet. Maybe another time. We're going to move on to the next lecture that I went to, and this was also a very good one. Don't Be Bamboozled by a Bad Book Editor by Shayla Raquel. Now, what I really liked about this session is it's very oriented to self-publishing authors, but it's not exclusive to them. If you're looking for traditional publishing, it's good to get an editor. That way your draft is as clean as possible and ready for distribution through those channels. But generally, me being self-published as well as a lot of other writers that I met, this was a good class to go to. And what was cool about this one, this was probably the only one where she kind of encouraged us to live tweet the session. And while there wasn't a hard or fast rule about phones or whatever, it was kind of an unspoken rule where you just didn't have your phone out during these presentations. And why would you? A lot of good information could be lost that way. But because she took her time and kind of went slow and kind of explained each slide, it gave us enough time to snap a picture, put it on Twitter. You might have seen me doing that. So that's what I was doing there. Step 1, avoid making an irreversible mistake. It ruins the credibility as an author. It ruins your chance of getting book ambassadors, which is people hyping up your books, your next books, your collections, your series. Negative reviews are not erasable, at least on Amazon or Goodreads, so they stick on there, and they can ruin your reputation. It costs you more in the long run, such as money and credibility. Get an editor. Now, what that means of destroying your credibility, it's not necessarily the content of the book, but how it's presented to the audience. If you're getting 1-star reviews because people said this is sloppy work, there's a whole bunch of grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes, just errors in formatting, that's going to ruin your cred more than people thinking what you wrote sucks. Because I guarantee you, no matter what you write, you're going to find someone who likes it a lot. That's not ruining your cred. If you put your heart and passion into it, people will see that and they'll latch onto it. What you can't fake is good writing. And I mean in a technical way where everything is correct. So you don't want to ruin that credibility. So you need to get an editor. And what it means by it'll cost you more in the long run, don't skimp on an editor. You could, spend $100 talking to an English teacher, and no offense to them, but they're not necessarily versed in the craft of selling books. If they are, more power to them for sure. But if you're going to scrimp on an editor, be prepared to pay more in the long run when it comes time to polish that book up. Let's see. What was this? Hire an editor. It's impossible to self-edit a book for publication. And she says that because we're very biased in our own work. No matter how many times we go through it with a fine-tooth comb, there will be something there that we miss. And because we went through it so many times, we have a hard time accepting that there's anything wrong with our draft. So it's very much getting an editor is getting someone to look at it and actually knows what to look for and tell you what's up. Okay, beta readers read for free. So if you're looking for more people to kind of look over your work, it's good to get beta readers. They offer suggestions as a reader, i.e. the customers. They kind of tell you what you need to work on, what you need to tighten. And how to find these beta readers, you can go to Facebook author groups and look for genres, your genre that you write for. Find a Facebook group that does sci-fi and fantasy, one that does romance, one that does historical fiction. At least those readers know what to look for in a novel in that genre. So get as creative as you can, but also understand there are rules to writing. Okay. Step 2. Determine what kind of editing you need. And there are different types. There's developmental editing, and developmental editing addresses plot holes, character development, format, organization, and revision. And they may even draft a whole new outline. And pretty much this kind of ensures, this type of editing ensures that your book flows well narratively as far as storytelling goes. And you may get a whole new outline because of it. Uh, you may ask to see a repertoire and find authors that worked with that author, or with that editor, I should say. That way you can get kind of a reference whether, this editor is trustworthy, if you can send your work to them and, follow their guidance of what they have to say. So it's good to ask other authors that worked with them. They also do a lot of content editing. They catch, and that means catching inconsistent behaviors in the dialogue, in the characters. They make the dialogue believable. They patch up plot holes. They eliminate the passive voice, odd phrasing, confusing sentences, and they catch, fumbles in style, themes, tone. Pretty much, developmental edit's about keeping you tight and keeping you consistent as far as the way the story flows. Then you have, that was the second thing. Content editing is the other thing I talked about. I apologize. Content editing is catching inconsistent behaviors in characters. It makes the dialogue more believable. It patches up plot holes, eliminate passive voice, odd phrasing, confusing sentences, and they catch fumbles in style, themes, and tone. That's what a content editor does. Copy editing is the quickest and the cheapest, although the skill of the writer has to be pretty high. Now, copy editing is the nuts and bolts of writing, which is very much the grammar, the spelling, the punctuation, and consistency, technical little details, and they help you with clarity and flow. That way it's structured correctly, kind of flows well. Copy editing is the cheapest, but it does require the author or the writer to have the highest skill. So the better you get at, editing yourself and, going through critique groups, getting beta readers, the better you are at that, the cheaper it is to going to hire an editor. Proofreading, there's another one. After the book has been edited and formatted, this is the last stage before the page layout file goes to the printer. This is kind of a final scrub down, trying to see if there's anything funky, if there's anything off, and that's what that does. And of course, the style to use whenever you're writing a book is CMOS, or the Chicago Manual of Style. Those are the rules that we play by. Other than that, you can write whatever you want, so long as you follow CMOS. Step 3, set a budget. And cost, it all depends on the length of the book, such as the word count itself, not the page count, the word count. The kind of editing you need, turnaround time. If you rush your editor, it's going to cost more because it's a lot of work. The editor's experience level, and this is kind of the trickiness of it, right? Obviously, the lower the experience level, the cheaper it's going to be, but there's a good chance you might have to hire an editor again. Whereas the higher experience, obviously the more expensive they're going to be. At least you're guaranteed your book in its proper form, but you might be crunching the numbers a bit too hard on that one. And the cost also depends on the quality of the book itself, whether it's good, if it's bad. I imagine if your book is better, it will be cheaper because it just needs copy editing, that kind of thing. Generally, and she kind of gave a general price, a 100,000 word book starts at around $2,000 to edit and could go up to $4,500. And immediately a lot of people were like, oh no. But you can ask for payment plans, such as half up front, half at the end. You can do that. Because generally editors are people too, at least the ones online. They're not with big companies, so you can ask for a payment plan. You can negotiate a discount for a series, and everything that you two figure out goes in the contract. Now the contract sounds really scary, but it's a form to protect both parties, both the writer sending their work in to get it edited, and the editor to ensure that she or he gets paid. Pro tip: stay away from editors who charge by the hour. Now, this sounds obvious, to someone like myself, but to a lot of people who are starting out, it may seem like the right way to go. You never know how many hours an editor is working, so general pro tips: stay away from editors who charge by the hour, is what I wrote. Step 4, research your candidates. How long have they been editing? How many books have they edited? Someone in college or an English teacher is not adept in the field of editing fiction. And again, obviously she didn't mean any disrespect, but if an English teacher is writing full time and actually editing, then, more power to you. But if her main job is teaching and she doesn't really write much, just because she got a degree for teaching English doesn't necessarily translate into the world of fiction editing. Have you edited and then your genre, sci-fi fantasy book before? Let's see. Something editor is familiar. Oh, make sure the editor is familiar in your genre. So, you're obviously not going to go to a romance editor to edit your sci-fi novel. It just won't work. And generally, everybody has an easier time, and that could result in you saving more money. So remember that. What is the turnaround time? And, when copy editing a full novel, and this is just copy editing, this is when your experience is high. A full novel, it'll take 4 to 6 weeks. It can possibly run up to 2 months even, which is 8 weeks. Developmental takes about 4+ months. It depends on the edit that you need. The editor should be open. Yeah, the editor should be open and stick to the schedule. So having constant communication with your editor is key. That way nobody's getting ripped off, everybody's getting paid, everybody's getting what they asked for. But yeah, the whole developmental editing taking 4+ months. For those who haven't grasped it yet, a developmental editor pretty much helps you structure the fiction part of your fiction very much. So it's going to take a lot longer because you're pretty much having to redo the story. Let's see. You can ask, will you charge more if it gets past the turnaround time? That depends on the editor. Like I said, it's a good question to ask. Will you charge more if the project takes past its turnaround time in which you insured? And if it does, you guys negotiate it out and see what will that do. Will you use track changes to show your edits? Track changes can be seen in Microsoft Word and show the author every edit. So that way the author can actually see what you did. Will you do a sample edit so I can see your work? Some editors charge whenever you ask to see a sample of their work. Some do it for free. Those that do it for free are trying to build themselves up and trying to build a brand. I'd recommend going to that. That way you know for sure whether this person is right for you. Can I contact any of your recent clients? It's good to prep for this beforehand, as in go to Amazon, read the reviews, and look out for comments about editors. Make sure you gel with your editor. I kind of skipped around a bit. But yeah, it's good to do your research before meeting your candidate, even answering your own question beforehand, and that way you can find out who wrote the book, find out who the editor was, and kind of get it from there. Will you sign a contract to cover what we've discussed? And in a contract, you get the exact price, the timeline as to when the turnaround is, what the editor will be accomplishing during that time, what will happen if the editor doesn't deliver, what if they need changes, make sure they can adapt. That's kind of a tip to an editor there. Step 5, review the information. Did the editor reply to my emails quickly? This is kind of questions to ask whether your editor is a good one. Does he ask about my book? That way it shows that he's interested in your work and is thus interested in you. Was he professional? Was he good to talk to? Did he not seem like a jerk or nothing like that? Does he walk the walk? As in, did he send out a sample edit that was good? And does he have reviews on Amazon and all that good stuff? Was he friendly? with an editor, you're kind of building a new relationship. It can be business for sure, but it's good to know that your editor is friendly and someone easy to talk to because, in my opinion, this is a double star note here. Books, whenever we write books, it's a very personal thing for us. I imagine a lot of you out there, whenever you're asked by someone, so what's your book about? You kind of cringe a little bit because you don't want to tell them, but you're also really excited that someone knows, but you also don't want them to know, that kind of whole situation. And you're building a relationship with an editor, and the fact that they care about your book should help you bond a lot easier. Instinct or go with your gut is what you should check when it comes to reviewing the information. If the editor kind of gives you a bad vibe, generally go with your gut. A bit of a scientific note here, we're pretty good at picking up nonverbal signals, way better than picking up words. So go with your instinct if you want to work with this editor or not. The pro tip is credibility is everything. Don't let a bad manuscript flush your reputation down the toilet, because that'll seem like you don't care. And in my experience, if the customer feels like they don't care, they won't. If you don't care about the customer, they won't care about you. Some people to look up is Jane Friedman. I believe she wrote a book called The Business of Writing. I'm going to go ahead and pick that up very soon. I hope you do as well. Talk to the authors. They're not immortal gods just because they got 500 reviews, good reviews on Amazon. You can talk to them and see what kind of editors they go with. Research your editors. From what she said, it's a small knit community, so generally a lot of people know each other. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. See, every time. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and readjust my camera real quick because I feel. We're gonna go ahead and move on to the last two classes of the day. One of those was cutting a vein with Sandaria Faye. So, it was a pretty popular class, and I'll go ahead and make the connection for you. I'm the guy who stood up in front of everybody and said that he really found something whenever he did the exercise. I'm that guy who sat up in front and talked in front of the class. I'm that guy. I made a quick note here is when she talked about her credentials, Miss Faye did. She said she had no agent, she didn't query, and she still won a literary award. So that's something to consider. I didn't ask if she self-published or not, but after missing the chance to query, to pitch to the agent, that really kind of boosted me back up, is the fact that she won a literary award without having to do those things. It just kind of goes to show just how crazy, this whole medium of writing, it really is. It's pretty nuts. One of the first things she told us is to write 5 scenes of our novel, and just to kind of have them down, 5 pivotal points where something happens to our character. And the reason she did that, she went on, now write 5 scenes of your own. Five things that you wouldn't tell other people in person. And of course I did so, and I even added to the list. And while we had these lists of very intense things, she got onto the lesson where emotions, Oh, I wrote here that it's all about emotions, and the class seems to be building itself. It started off kind of strange to me because she was giving us an assignment to do, and she wasn't getting into it at first, and I thought it was really weird, and I was kind of picking it up, and I was like, I feel like the class is kind of forming itself, so that was interesting. And then she really got to it when she brought up an example. When you think of a football player who's leaving it out on the field, you imagine a receiver who's soaring in the air, who's about to get tackled, for having the ball or catching the ball. I'm not a sports guy, so I don't know what to call him. And pretty much the nitty-gritty of it, you have to go with your characters into those places. A note I have here, inject yourself, your fears, your insecurity into your characters. and do not spare your characters from suffering. And even if you're still unsure what the subject is, go all the way in. Don't pull back. And generally, what that means is, and I kind of had to work this out myself because self-insert characters in fictional novels, they're kind of hit or miss. And I think what makes them miss most of the time is that the authors aren't willing to go all in. Because in real life, just like the conflict class before, we want our lives to go kind of like without conflict. We want stuff to happen for sure, but we mainly want good stuff to happen. And he's always dropping books. We want good stuff to happen in our... Most likely, don't mess with the mic. We want good stuff to happen in our lives. We don't want conflict in our lives. And that's why writing self-insert characters are difficult, because we don't go into it. We don't put our fears, we don't put our insecurities into our characters, especially if they work as an avatar of ourselves, because we don't want to confront the ugly truths about ourselves. But if the writing gets difficult, step back, away from it, then come back to it and really knock it out. I feel that separates a good writer from a great one, is how willing are you to get into the nitty-gritty. How willing are you to put yourself out there like that? And I feel that's what separates a lot of good and great writers, is the fact that they're willing to expose themselves like that. And that's kind of what that was all about. Cutting a vein is cutting the vein and letting yourself bleed out onto the page. That's not what she said, that's what I'm saying. I feel like that's what the class was about, is cutting your vein and bleeding onto the page with your own, your own setbacks. It doesn't have to be gratuitous, but impactful. It has to leave an impact. I put feel, don't show. I feel like feel is the ultimate stage. As you know, you don't tell, you show. You don't show, you feel. Ultimately, you want to feel. You want to give your readers how to feel. A really good author can make a winter wonderland seem really cold in the summer, So the levels go telling, showing, and feeling. And you always want to go for feeling. Cutting a vein is going all the way in while the character is still consistent. Obviously you don't want them to go completely off the wall. You want them to grow and kind of go with the flow of the story. Empathize with your characters. Go all the way in. Make the reader cry. You control the emotions. And that's kind of what we're all about, aren't we? We manipulate the reader's emotions, pretty much. And obviously, we're doing it through a novel. We're not we're not getting anything out of it. We just enjoy messing with the reader's emotions. I put here as a little note here is go see a shrink, grab whatever they tell you, and put it on the page. And of course, I feel like it'll be a cathartic experience if you do that, because you're exposing it and you're looking at it in print for the first time. I know for me, whenever I have a self-limiting belief or a thought that's in my head, once I get it out there and I hear it coming out of my mouth and someone else is listening, most of the time it turns out pretty well. Other times I realize what a dumb thought that was, and I should just work that out. So definitely go see a professional, go see a shrink, figure out what's wrong with you, and put it on the page. Just put yourself out there. And what we make up has to feel real, has to be real. So the stories that we make up, if we put ourselves out there, that's what makes the stories real. It goes all the way back to the keynote speech that Scott Westerfield said. I don't know if they got together and kind of shared notes, but the idea is still there in my opinion. It's novels and stories are more impactful than the truth. Because you can print a novel with a bunch of statistics on there about why smoking is bad, or why drinking and driving is bad, why texting while driving is bad. But I feel if you don't have the proper story in it where people can get invested in the characters, I feel like that would be way more effective than putting stats and facts on the page. And the reader can't feel what the character can't feel. That's why you put it out there. They don't know the subtleties of a character and their little tics if they don't know that's what the character is feeling. And ultimately, like it's one of those. It was one of those sessions where the final exercise was we had to write an excerpt with that in mind, kind of the emotions that our character's dealing with, and just kind of put it in there. And I came to a realization of my own writing. Whenever I got up in front of you guys and started talking, in my story, and I'm starting to realize where it's coming from. It's time to get a little personal, I guess. With my story, it formed out of me hanging out with my buddy back when I was 17, and I kind of decided to take the story and run with it. And I've been working on it ever since, and it's kind of grown up with me. The themes of it has changed as I've changed over time, and I feel it's at its ultimate level right now where I can actually finish it and get it done and get it published for sure. But the main idea behind it is it involves 5 people who come together through circumstance to destroy a cloud that's over their city. Simple enough. But the dynamics breaks down in the characters themselves. 4 of the people that are going on the trip to destroy the cloud, they're generally good people, or at least decent people according to society standards. The 5th member, however, is a bank robber. And the only reason he's on the team with the rest of the guys is because he's very skilled at building stuff out of trash. He's good at building something from nothing. And that's why they blackmail him to have them in their group to build stuff for them. And he goes through his own development in the story, in which the only reason he trains himself to be so good at building stuff is because he's the only one in the story who doesn't have any powers. He doesn't have any abilities. He can't shoot beams out of his hands. He can't create fire, through his sweat. He can't lift heavy objects. He relies on his instincts and his own intelligence to survive. And I've always found myself attached to that. And it's only now I'm kind of realizing that character is supposed to represent me because of how I see myself, or how I used to see myself in the world. As far as today, it's kind of tough to say how I see myself. I guess I see myself as a guy who's trying to live his way, trying to live the life he wants in this world, surrounded by other people who are trying to do the exact same. I can accept that and understand that. On the one hand, it's one of those things where there's nothing that puts me above other people, but I know what makes me unique. It's one of those things. It's a very mature way of looking at it, if you will. But back then, whenever I made a concept of this character, it was him trying to prove himself in a world full of extraordinary people, relying on his intelligence and instinct alone. And that really resonated with me. And that's why I really like shows and stories and tropes that mess with the idea where everyone's extraordinary, except for one guy. And that one guy is just doing his best. And sometimes he can keep up, other times he can't, and that really relates to me very well. And I guess that's why I made the concept of the character. And cutting a vein, that helped me kind of explore that even more. And I'll probably get into it a lot more in a later video. But I'm going to go ahead and go to the final one. And the fact that you're watching this on here right now has something to do with it. Building a YouTube platform by Seth Skorkowski. Now, if you're on the YouTube scene, and you might have seen this stuff before, he said some stuff that is very common, but also it's worth repeating. What should your channel be about? It should be about you. You are the brand, you are the product. As authors, especially self-published ones, it's all about branding and putting our name out there. Now, number one, guys, I don't believe in the concept of introversion or extroversion. I feel it's a matter, to determine who's an introvert and who's an extrovert, it really depends on how you recharge your energy. I'm technically an introvert because I need to be alone to recharge my batteries, while other people, they need to be around other people to recharge their batteries. And I think that's the only defining things between the two. As far as sociability, affability, being able to talk to people, I think everybody is smart enough to kind of learn it as a skill and to get good at it. Because I'm an introvert, that doesn't mean I have to be a social shut-in. If you came and talked to me, I hope that came across that I'm very good at talking to people and generally I do enjoy talking and meeting new people. But I do get worn out if I do it for way too long. It's just who I am, and I don't believe in the whole like because you're an introvert you have to be a social outcast or a shut-in, or if you're an extrovert you have to always be out there and talking. I know plenty of extroverts who like to spend their time alone and kind of gather their thoughts, but when they're out there, that's where they hit their prime, and that's just my personal belief. The channel is why people read the story or watch the story. Storytelling is highly underrated when it comes to marketing and branding because it goes way back to the keynote that people love stories more than facts. You can't hit them with facts. You got to make the facts. You got to dress the facts up in a story, and you are that narrative. I put for myself. I got to figure out my direction and make them care about you. As I'm building my own YouTube platform, I'm still trying to figure out what direction I want to take it. Personally, for me, I love writing. Writing's my number one passion, but I also like anime. I also like fitness. I like to talk. I would like to talk about fitness a lot more. And I may not look it right now, but if you were to see my fitness vlog from just a couple days ago, I was 100 pounds heavier 7 months ago, 8 months ago. And, through my own effort and through working out and dieting, I was able to lose 100 pounds. And, naturally, for me to stick to something for so long, I have picked up some things, some knowledge that I'm willing to share. So I don't want to pigeonhole myself to just one thing. That's kind of the thing I need to figure out is, because I like working out and doing fitness, I like writing, I like anime, I like cats, I like talking about movies, I like... video games, I'm not so big in it anymore. I was as a kid, but not anymore. But if there's something cool out, I'll definitely play it, but I'm still trying to figure that out. And he even says here, your channel could be about your hobbies, your interests, pop culture, sports, whatever interests you. And one of the things I feel like people should know, if you're watching this right now, if you're watching me right now, if you stuck around this long, guys, you can make your own YouTube channel. It doesn't matter how niche it may seem. If you're all about the Lolita fashion scene, go for it. If anything, the more niche, the better, because you're able to build your audience through that. I mean, for me, my interests, I'll admit, they're pretty general, especially the anime part, because anime is becoming very mainstream. Back then I was called a huge nerd. Now I'm just called part of the culture, even hipsterish. And you just gotta figure out your interests. Another person to look up is Chris Fox on YouTube. He is an author who is also a YouTuber. He also left him some practical advice, like adding links to your Amazon book page on the banner itself. So whenever someone clicks on your channel, you have a nice, convenient link saying, "Here is where you can buy my books." What else? Channels are the name. You are the brand. And the only reason why I'm reading slow is because my handwriting is awful. So I'm trying to read it better. And the only reason why it's bad is because I had to be really fast with it. There's also Matthew Colville, who does RPG games. He is also a fantasy author. And see, this is exactly what I'm saying. They enjoy role-playing games and, games such as that, and they're also authors. And they do kind of go hand in hand, but, I mean, so does anime and writing books. So does working out and motivation, Let's see. You want to make your Amazon links a high priority, so if you already have books out and you're building your YouTube channel, it's good to kind of have that in the description as the first link. And back to the channels as your name. You're probably going to see up here my Twitter handle. My YouTube channel has my real name, because if you look up Gary Medina right now, there is an unsavory news story that has my name on it. It's not me, I can tell you that, number one. But by having my name on the YouTube channel, when it does start to pick up momentum, people will associate that channel with me, because that means I am the brand. And that's why you want to put your real name on it, not crazy funky name. Twitter, it's okay, but on YouTube, not so much. far as equipment, I summed it up to pretty much get what you need depending on your needs. So if you're doing vlogs like this video right here is being recorded on an I believe it is a Samsung S6 Edge Plus, a cell phone pretty much, and the quality's fine. You know, it's still 1080p. You can see me just fine. All the little details of my face. I don't need big setups right away. In the future, yeah, it'd be nice once I start getting some revenue in, but for now, this works just fine. And I have my microphone here. This microphone cost me $120. It might be pricey to some people. It might be cheap to others. For me, you know, I got it because I care about sound quality. Nothing turns me off of a video more than a bad sound. If you can't hear me, or if you can't hear the person speaking, or whatever. I mess with sound all the time. Premium is kind of a waste. Like I said, you don't need to spend a lot. This is my whole setup. My laptop, my microphone, and my phone. I also bought a lapel mic for $20 off of Amazon. Whenever I do vlogs, I kind of clip it on there and just kind of record myself. I like doing this better because the sound quality is better. I just want to up the quality of the sound. As far as the video side of it, I think this works just fine for now. Lighting is important though. Right now I kind of have the sunlight coming in and I think I look good, and I want to give a kind of a real authentic experience to you. Whenever I do vlogs inside my office, it's dark in there and I use a couple extra lights, but I use literally a lamp from that I use in my living room as my lighting. And he gave more practical advice. There's light rigs, and they're good for details, but bad for glasses, or light rings, I should say. There's these nice, you know, rings of light that they're more for makeup people. If you're doing makeup stuff and you're putting, you know, all that detail on your face, it's better for that. But me being just a guy talking about writing, I don't really need that. And I wear glasses, so, you know, you don't want to see these glowing saucers on my eyes. Spend money on equipment when you know your channel, when you know what your channel is all about. And, you know, visually, I want people to see where I'm doing. And he said invest in a green screen. I'll try it for sure, but for now, I feel like it doesn't really fit with what I'm doing. Because I know we live in a world full of people trying to sell you things, trying to be dishonest about it. I want to be as real as I can. Everything, what you see is what you get. What you see in this video is what you'll get when you meet me in real life. Maybe I'll be a bit more forthcoming on a lot of my own thoughts when we're drunk or high together, but generally, this is what you get. I didn't write a script for this. I'm literally just going off the notes here. I'm getting a lot more comfortable in front of the camera. And while I do believe I should structure my stuff a lot more properly, I don't think I'll ever have a word-for-word script. He even said get a teleprompter. Pretty much even your phone will work when you have your script there, or a PowerPoint presentation preloaded onto like your PS4 and putting it on the TV. Me personally, I probably wouldn't do that because I like kind of this raw and kind of a real take on the way I do things, you know? Because all I am, there's no force behind me. I'm just a guy from Oklahoma City who's just reading his notes, who just likes to make videos, and who wants to write books. That's all I am. I mean, I'm not, I don't know. But let's go ahead and get back to the notes. Reduce the ums and the ahs, unlike me. I'm generally pretty good at what I'm talking about, especially when I have the idea in my head and kind of worked it out. I'm pretty good about not using filler words like that, unless, you know, I'm hit with something that I haven't figured out yet. Use of PowerPoints for prompts, script it out, you know, figure out crossover success. That's my own personal note. Really what appeals to a major audience. Editing videos. Me, myself, I use Sony Vegas Pro 14. I was very lucky that it was on sale on Steam for $140. Generally, that program goes for $600 to $700, so it was a steal at the time. And it's the program that I trained with because when I was younger and editing videos for the first time, I kind of got the first, Vegas Pro through less than, less than moral means. I got it through those kinds of means. It became a problem whenever I tried to transfer those types of files onto my computer, and it almost gave me a Trojan virus. So I decided to do it legit and do it legally and just buy it. And it's probably a good decision. I don't have to risk getting a virus. The Steam support, it can have issues at times, but as long as you stay persistent and persevere, you generally fix those no problem. But if you are looking for a free alternative, and this is for someone starting out, I've been editing videos and doing this kind of thing for 7 to 8 years now, One of my last jobs was working for my buddy in his business. He ran an airsoft store, and I was his video editing guy. Pretty much, I would shoot videos for the company and edit them together, and that's where I cut my teeth. That's where I learned to edit. But this right here, this following advice is for people who are trying it out for the first time. To someone who's never edited videos before. The program you can use is HitFilm. It's professional. It's free. It's modular with effects packages. They make their money because you buy effects packages to add on to the program. And I believe all they ask in return is that you share it on your profile or on like a social media profile and whatnot. And that's all they ask in return because they make their money off of the effects packages, which are like $12, $13 a pop. I may even look at the HitFilm myself, to be honest. It sounds pretty great. And with the whole editing program knowledge, it's all about getting in there and practicing. I didn't know how to mess with Sony Vegas, but I had a strong desire to learn, and I taught myself how to use it. And even today, I'm still learning brand new things about Sony Vegas just by experimenting around and being unafraid to do so. So, watch the larger channels in your niche. And don't compare, just take notes, see what they're doing right, because they have teams and budgets and the skill that someone who's doing it brand new just doesn't have. So don't get discouraged just because they have like 1 million subscribers and you're still, with a very low count yourself. Even right now, at the recording of this, I have, I believe, 9 subscribers. But I'm still going strong because I know that I'm getting better every time I do this, and I know that I'm figuring out the direction I want to go with my YouTube channel. You can get there, but don't expect to start there. That's a really good piece of advice he gave. You can get there, just don't expect to start there. So now you've posted, now what? Well, now that's when you self-promote through Facebook. Here's a good one that I'm going to adopt for sure, Reddit. Find your dedicated subreddit, and with Reddit, the subreddits get so niche, so specific, you will find whatever it is you're passionate about and post a video on, and you just post it there and you kind of build your audience from there. Look up the specific subreddit that you're looking for. Also promote on Twitter. I promote my YouTube channel on Twitter all the time, and this is a personal thing for me. If you click on this video, it's more than likely you saw a native video on Facebook of a little trailer that I make. It generally takes me another 30 minutes to an hour to do. It's extra time and extra effort, but that's just kind of my own personal branding. I like to make as much content as possible. That's why I make tiny trailers for the videos that I'm going to put out there. It's added work, and I could just simply post a link and be done with it, but I want to put that little bit of effort out there, and to have a little preview. And whenever you start getting more of a following, whenever you start posting consistently and start getting views, that's when the algorithms of YouTube start to build you. So be consistent. They say Seth Skorkowski says, it's good to have an upload every 7 to 10 days per video. Me, I'm doing the crazy thing where I'll try my best to do one every day. Luckily, because I'm currently self-employed, I have plenty of time to do that. And it's good to time it and schedule your videos, which I do. I generally upload them in the morning and just kind of schedule them to be released later. Consistent channels keep viewers, and YouTube promotes consistency. So the more you post, the more YouTube's going to pick up, and the algorithms are going to pick up. It's like, hey, you've watched this video. Well, here's this guy who kind of posts in the same area. Check him out. It's going to take time, and subscribers are... once a week will keep the algorithms in your favor. So the fact that you post 7 to 10 days is good. 10 days is the max, of course. But you want to keep it at least 7 days per upload. And when YouTube sees that consistency, that's when it'll promote you. And of course, it's going to take time. And I wrote a personal note here, and please excuse the language, but you're going to eat shit for a long time. The thing that really resonated with me with Seth's, session was he showed a chart of his subscriber count, and it was a very honest moment there, where for 9 months straight, he's stuck with very low subscribers. I don't remember if it was a big number, but it stayed very low for a long time, for 9 months even. And then one day it just boomed. It just exploded. Now, I'm not saying it'll take 9 months. It could take even longer, for you out there. Or it could be an instant hit. These algorithms are very hard to figure out. But the fact that he was so honest and said that he had to eat shit for 9 months, that was really inspiring to me. Because I just started, and I'm starting to be more consistent with my YouTube channel. But I look back and, there was times where there was months, like 1 month between videos. And I guess at the time I just didn't have the motivation to keep going. So something to remember, you gotta go through, you gotta pay your dues. And algorithms will decide if you are worthy. That's why you have to stay consistent. As far as YouTube monetization, this is the big one. You have to meet a couple of requirements to do so. You have to have over 1,000 subs or subscriptions and 4,000 hours worth of watch time. So if you have, if you're one of the refugees from Vine and you have 7-second videos, you better have a lot of them. You got to add them up to over 4,000 hours worth of watch time. And YouTube isn't the only income stream. There's book sales, so write your book. And this is a note from me: write your book. You can make videos all you want, but you still got to write that book. Merch, books on a let's see, what does it say on a fee? I put books, but merchandise like T-shirts or hats or just bits of merchandise here and there if your channel gets big enough. Sales links to there's the Amazon Associates program. It's pretty much links that follow back to Amazon, very powerful links. So you want to look into the Amazon Associates program, in which whatever you advertise, you put a link to that item, and whatever they make off of the product, you get a percentage, a commission out of it. So Amazon Associates program, that's a good one. Be diverse in separating into categories and scheduled revolving content, and get specific on Reddit. Now this right here, this is kind of what I'm doing. Writing is my passion for sure, but that's not all what I'm all about. That's why I have it separated to. That's why I have a fitness blog or vlog. I have a writing vlog. I'm still trying to branch out and do other things for sure, and kind of have that revolving so people know what to expect on a certain type of day. And with the whole get specific on Reddit, it's very specific, very niche. You should be able to find your tribe there. Okay, that about concludes all of my notes from DFW Con 2018. We have now closed the DFW Con 2018 arc. Expect it to bubble up again around this time of year. Thank you again to the organizers who put it all together. Thank you to the speakers who came, gave us their time and their knowledge, and really, really gave us a lot of useful information. Thank you, Shayla, for telling me that this event existed. And I'll be honest, this event changed my life in a little way. It's made me more affirmed that this can be a real thing. This writing thing can be a real thing for me. And I'm about to get really cheesy on you guys, but this is the first time where I felt like I belonged somewhere. Everybody I talked to was super nice. Everybody I talked to was passionate about writing. And much respect to my friends and my family, but every time I try to talk to them about creative literary stuff or just kind of the way a story works, they usually kind of zone out. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I started a YouTube channel, was to find that audience. And the fact that I found it now pushes me to really work hard and build an audience to where other people who feel like they don't belong can feel like they belong, And of course, I was one of the few brown people there at the event, but it didn't really matter because we were all connected by our love of writing, And thank you, Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm grateful to have met you all. I hope to meet more of you in the future. I hope these 2 videos have been informative to you. I hope you took a lot of notes. I hope we walked away with a lot of knowledge for sure. And yeah, what else is there to say? I'll see you guys next year.